Hello and welcome to episode 12 of the Developers Zen podcast, where we talk about everything in the games industry, but from the eyes of two indie devs. My name is Siavash, aka Rainy, and my co-host is Sydney, aka Fem. In this week's episode, we are going to be tackling another topic from our How to Indie series, and this one is titled, as you can see right below the video, How to Choose the Right Publisher for Your Game. Now, if you aren't a game dev, don't let this deter you as to not wanting to watch this episode. If you're still curious...
Still good info.
From a gamer's perspective, and want to know how we choose publishers or how we choose who we want to work with, just from a game dev's perspective, you can hang out with us and tag along and hear our perspective on it. But yes, today's episode is one about that.
Like, I was gonna say, just like even getting information on like what publishers to support.
Yeah.
Or not support.
Fair enough.
Like,
yeah.
Well, my voice went, but like, you know, as with anything, I'm a big believer in like vote with your money. And I definitely think you should kind of look into who's making the games that you are buying and decide if you really want to support them or if the game is good enough that you're willing to ignore it. FIFA, you know, so
yeah.
EA, you know, so, but this will kind of give you an idea of like the indie level, what we deal with. Everybody knows about the AAA stuff. And like there are some indie publishers that you kind of like hear names get thrown around. Like people kind of know Team 17. People kind of know Devolver. People kind of know others that I can't think of right now. But yeah. They're not as big
Chucklefish,
as like. But like if I say, you know, Epic Games, people know who I'm talking about. If I say EA Games, people know who I'm talking
Ubisoft,
about. But
yeah, Rockstar. Yeah.
Ubisoft, yeah. But if I say Top Hat,
you don't
know what I'm talking.
Yeah.
But it's a publisher, so we're not gonna like call out publishers. We might give you a list of ones that we know things about, and then we're gonna speak things, but we're not gonna tell you like who's what. I think that's probably the best way to do it to avoid.
But we also
issues.
wanted to talk about. The thing is, especially as a new indie, you might not be sure as to what services publishers even provide. I can speak that like, when I started working on SunnySide, I wasn't sure what I could expect from a publisher. Again, I had only seen the AAA stuff. I just thought they put my game on a store, they give it some marketing, and that's about it. But there are so many other services that publishers provide.
So much more complicated.
And much more importantly, publishers most of the time specialize, especially in the indie scene, they specialize in certain aspects. You could have a publisher that never funds you in any way, but helps you do your marketing. There are publishers that only kind of tag along towards the end of the project to get your game on a very specific platform or get you signature edition. Our publisher Merge actually specializes in that area. So we wanted to kind of give you an idea as to what services publishers provide, what are your expectations, kind of try to help you figure out what your expectations even are, and then how to go about choosing the best one that is the right fit for you. Not necessarily this is a good publisher, this is a bad publisher.
Yeah.
More so that
fits you what you need.
Or what you need, this is probably not a very good choice. Yeah.
I also want to point out to indie developers, and I think the one thing that publishers don't want you guys to know about, and the thing that I'm going to put a big spotlight on, is what are you giving up to have a publisher? It is at its root a transaction, and you need to know what your side of that transaction is. What are you giving up in order to get these services? We talked last week about what a service even is, and publishing is a service, but services have to be paid for. And so what do you have to do to pay for those types of services? So I definitely want to talk about that, because that's, I think, the most important part, honestly.
Yeah. So grab yourself a
tea.
Drink, get cozy, because we're gonna get to the heart of it.
Okay, so let's start. What's a video game publisher, Rainy?
Just in general.
Well, okay, let's talk to 4 year ago Rainy.
Let's
talk to 4 year ago Rainy, who didn't know anything about publishing. Let's talk to the regular gamer. Yeah, from a newbie perspective, what do you think a publisher is? I'm gonna sit here and eat my cookies and tea.
Okay. Well, I used to think that a publisher was just a company that helps you publish your game, such as a book publishing or a record label, essentially letting you do the game, and then once the game is done, they just kind of take that game and put it on all the storefronts for you and do the marketing that would come along with it. But essentially, I used to think that publishers were pretty hands-off most of the time with the development process, unless they were making something in-house.
Yeah, did you think that in order to make a game, you needed a publisher?
No, but only because of the fact that I had a bit of research through grants and stuff. I thought I could get a game done by using, for example, Epic's grant, the Med grant, or stuff like that. I knew you could do a game without a publisher. Another reason, but I did not think 4 years ago that it would be possible to put your game on Xbox or PlayStation or Switch without a publisher. I still think it's pretty difficult.
Well, 15, 20 years ago, that was true.
Yeah.
And just, I think we've kind of talked about this before, like, what is a publisher? And it's different now than it used to be. It used to be that because games were only products, and they were only physical products, you had to have somebody who could manufacture it for you.
The logistics, yeah.
Music was the exact same way. Movies were the exact same way. Any of these art form medias, or whatever, you know what I mean? If you wanted people to see it, you needed to find somebody who could manufacture it into a physical product that could then be shipped out. Because we have digital products now, it's a little bit different. The barrier to entry is non-existent now. So, I mean, it's monetary more than anything. So now anybody can pretty much sign up for a Nintendo dev kit. Costs some money, but you can do it. Same thing with Xbox.
Yeah.
PlayStation's harder. You have to prove that you're a business first. But as long as you can prove that you're a business and you're making a legitimate go of this, you can do it with PlayStation too. It's not that hard.
By the way, if you want to know about the ins and outs of how to start a business, we had an episode about this. Go check it out.
So, you know, you don't need a publisher, and we've talked about that in other, episodes too. So, but that's kind of, you're not far off from it, but because times have changed and we have digital games now, there are other types of publishers now. And I think this is me just, conjecture, but I think they kind of started to realize it too, that they weren't needed as much, so they kind of started adjusting to meet the new needs of people. So you now have publishers who offer a much wider array of services than just getting your game out into stores and stuff. So what are those services? What are some things that publishers potentially offer?
Yeah, so you can expect your publishers to provide you with probably first and foremost, development funds. So making games is an expensive venture, and one of the things that a publisher can do, probably one of the harder things, honestly, that you need to convince them to do, is to fund your game. Besides that, they can also take on localization for your game. They can take on porting efforts for your game. And besides all of that, it goes back to the fact that if you want a physical release for your game, they can also handle all of that for you, in addition to signature editions and merchandise and all of that stuff.
Now that's becoming a less common service.
Yes, these days especially. I mean, we're in a day and age where we have publishers that are digital only. They don't do anything physical. But in addition to that, you can also expect marketing help from them. Marketing especially, I feel like, is a very incredibly hard and difficult thing for indie devs. Not just that you have to be 24/7 keeping an ear and eye out for events that are coming up, create assets for them, create trailers for them, sign up to them, convince them that you're worthy. But at the same time, you need to have a lot of connections, a lot of networking power that you might, as an individual, not have. A company that...
And you have to know how PR works.
Yeah. And you need to know someone somewhere to scratch their back to help you with some sort of marketing push. And publishers, especially the ones who are a bit more known and well-known...
Or established.
Can absolutely help you in this.
There's also production assistance. Some will offer, sending you developers to help you make your game. or
yeah.
artists, or helping you find other companies that can help you with development, or just helping you figure out what production timeline should look like, or how to keep things organized, or maybe they'll just assign you a producer who will keep you organized, who you have to report to.
And I want to also sorry, I want to clear up a little misconception about publishers that I had when I jumped in. But you don't have to be broke with no money and nothing to go to a publisher. You could be very well established, you could have millions in the bank, and then go to a publisher for completion of some sort of...
It goes both ways.
Yeah, it goes both ways. You could already have established game on PC, you want to bring it to consoles, you go to a publisher, you give them the money, everything that you need, and then that's pretty much done.
And the thing is within indie publishing, there are a ton of different publishers who meet various arrays of these criteria. Some, might offer everything. They might be totally full service, and then they see what you need and they give you that. They might be marketing only and, help you maybe with crowdfunding, or help you manage crowdfunding you already had, and maybe they'll, just help you get your name out there. Maybe they'll toss you some developers that they have. You might have others who are just want to give you money and are totally hands off and don't want anything to do with it. And you'll have others who say, if we're giving you money, we want full creative oversight of your game. So it's
very case by case basis.
There are others who will wait until you have a finished game, and then you go to them with a finished game and they offer you porting and localization and marketing. So it depends entirely upon what you want for your game. If you're starting at ground zero, if you have no experience, or if you're starting on your 30th game and you just want somebody to help you with the porting and marketing stuff and everything in between. And the first step in finding a publisher is answering those questions. And we talked about how you can answer those questions in other episodes, so go back and watch those. How to figure out what your game needs and how to get funding and all that stuff. So what we want to talk about more is, once you know what your game needs, how do you go about finding somebody who fits your publishing needs? And I think kind of too, I want to point out is there is a huge difference between needing a publisher and just needing a marketing firm. If you're just looking for marketing and nothing else, go to a marketing firm who specializes in that. Because at that point, you're paying them for a service. With publishing, what you're paying them is often a portion of either your intellectual property or a portion of your revenue. And so the transaction is a little bit more risky on both sides. If you're going to a marketing firm, you're buying a service. If you're going to a publisher, you're trading. And trading has a lot more things that can go wrong, I think. So that's the first thing, is answer that question. If all you want is marketing, maybe don't go to a publisher, because you're going to potentially give up a lot more than you're ready to give up. So and I kind of wanted to talk about that, is with a publisher, what are you going to give up to have access to a publisher? And did you know when publishers first started approaching you and stuff for SunnySide, did you fully understand what it meant to
I don't think so.
Get in bed with a publisher?
No, definitely not. Definitely not the what it means to have a publisher in terms of what you get out of your game at the end of the day. I just thought being with a publisher is the win. That's it. But
yeah, I think a lot of people think that. I really do.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's where you go wrong, because a lot of indie devs that are especially kind of new to this, they think that as soon as they sign up with a publisher, that's the win they need, and that's it, done. But
you made it.
Yeah, you made it. But that's the start of it, and that's where a lot of the things can go wrong. It's kind of there is a proverb or some saying that you can't build a ship on a wonky foundation, or build a house on a wonky foundation, or something like that. I'm not sure what the full proverb is, but like that's it.
If you know, don't, let us know.
Yeah, please do. But if you don't set the foundation right, as this building goes up and up, the more wonky it's going to show, the more you build upon it. So you are going to suffer the consequences of your excitement a few years down the line if you don't do it carefully from the start. And
so, okay, so let's talk about some of the things that you might give up with a publisher, okay? Now, at first I want to preface this with, we have a good relationship with our publisher and we're not talking crap about merge. We, Rainy and I, we did a lot of searching before we found our publisher. We also have a lot of friends in the business who've told us about their publishers and their experiences. So I just kind of want to put a big disclaimer on this. We're not crapping on merge. They've been great to us. We've learned a lot of lessons, I think, on both sides of what to do, what not to do. But for the most part, we're speaking in general things that we have seen other people experience or that we have experienced ourselves. And we just kind of want to shine a light on. So just... merge, we love you, please don't be mad at us. So some things that might come up in a publishing deal, okay? So, and it's all going to come back to how much are you asking of them, and that's probably going to equate to how much they're going to ask of you. If all you want is developing money, that's going to be a lot cheaper transactionally than if you want full service publishing, and you need to be prepared for that. So I think in some other examples and other episodes, we talked about we're making $100,000 game, right? That's kind of the if you need $100,000, ask for two, right? Yeah. Because you might get negotiated down to 150. So always ask for a little bit more, just to give you that kind of that breathing room. So we're making our $200,000 game. If we go and we ask for that at a publisher, and that's all we want, it's very likely that what they're going to ask for is going to be a royalty share. That's a very common one. Royalty share means that after your game has sold, let's say we put it on Steam, Steam takes their 30% because that's their, business fee for doing business with them on their platform. So let's say you sell your game for $10 and you sell 100 copies, okay? What is that, $1,000? Yeah. You've made $1,000. Steam is going to take $300. The $700 that's left over is going to get paid out to the publisher, okay? Now, from that, we split it into royalty share, okay? So you've got $700 to work with. So if you're going in for 50-50 royalty share, the publisher is going to take half of, $350, and you're going to get $350. So you made $1,000, you're only going to get $350 out of it. That's how royalty share works. So let's say we split, we change it. Let's say you can convince them to give you 60%. You're going to get more money out of that royalty than had you had a different royalty share. What's fairly common in the industry, what we have heard from people as being very common, is 70-30 in favor of the publisher.
Yeah.
Which means you're getting 30% of 700. So that's something that I kind of want to get people to understand, is if you see a game that's selling really well, the developers at the end, you don't know what their royalty share is. They might not be getting anything, depending on what their contract says. So that's why I kind of often say, if you want to get mad at a game for being bad, please go get mad at the publisher. Don't get mad at the developers. We're doing our best. So that's one thing that could happen. There's also IP share or IP ownership. And we've talked about what intellectual property is. But IP share means that, it's possible that a publisher is going to want to own the intellectual property from the game that you make. And if you agree to that, it means that you have no claim to anything that you've made. And this is actually really common with a lot of developing houses. If you look at a great example is actually AAA level. If you look at the in-house development studios, they don't own the IP that they're creating. That's not their property, like God of War.
Yeah.
God of War is owned by PlayStation. And PlayStation can do anything they want with God of War. The people who created it get no claim or
That's actually
ownership
a very good example
over
of that.
that.
Is if you look at, and I think Sony got it back. I'm not entirely sure on its status right now, but Crash Bandicoot, the game was made by Naughty Dog, and Crash Bandicoot was, I think, owned by Activision, which is why Sony didn't have a Crash Bandicoot game after PS1 and 2 for a very long time, and then there was an Xbox 360 Crash Bandicoot game, and then it was just all really messed up. So
yeah,
that's another
Borderlands is actually another good example. So Borderlands was owned by Take-Two, and then it got sold to Embracer,
right,
and then got bought back by Take-Two. But they had to figure out the IP transfers with all that, because they were buying and selling the studio that owned Borderlands.
Yeah.
So it's very complicated when you get into there's a huge difference between game ownership and IP ownership. So what I can say is that RainyGames owns the IP to SunnySide. That is ours. We will do with it whatever we want. Nobody gets any say over that. But that doesn't always happen. So it's something to just kind of be aware of, especially if you see, weird things happening with different IP. You got to question who owns it or who's licensing it. The reason that you're seeing characters in Fortnite isn't because Epic is buying Avatar. They have a licensing deal with the owners of Avatar to use those characters in their game. So it's complicated. IP is a very complicated thing, but it's something
honestly,
that can and will pop up in contracts.
Is a wonder in terms of how many different IPs exist inside of it. It's
licensing deals, man.
It's a testament to good work that Epic has done legally to be able to license all these characters together. It's
impressive.
The same game. It is very impressive. Yeah.
So those are two things that you might give up in order to get into bed or go into business with a publisher, because at the end of the day, if you end up with a publisher and you sign a contract like this, you're going into business together. You're in it for the long haul. You're in it for as long as your contract lasts. If you have a 10-year contract, after 10 years you can kind of do whatever you want. If you have a 30-year contract, it's beyond the life of the game at that point, really. So you really have to look at those things too. How long is the term of your contract? Who's getting what out of it? Who is who has what responsibilities to do what things within a publishing relationship? Who is supposed to develop the game? Who gets to make creative decisions? There's so much stuff that goes into that process of that transaction of what are you willing to give up and what are the things that you aren't willing to give up. So for us, when it came to SunnySide, Rainy and I wanted to be able to walk into a GameStop and buy our game. That was hugely important to both of us, right?
Yeah.
It's like a point of pride for us, I think.
Much, yeah.
And so we wanted a publisher who specialized in that physical media, and we were willing to give up a little bit more in order to make that dream happen. Had we not wanted that so badly, we might have looked at the deal differently. So it's something you really have to, and something you have to pay attention to when you're looking at those contracts. Just because the publisher hands you a contract doesn't mean you sign it.
Yeah.
Get a lawyer, do the thing, do the due diligence.
Temper your excitement. Don't
temper your excitement.
Try. I know how easy it is. I fall into it all the time myself.
Trust me, Rainy knows how easy it is.
But try
if he
not
doesn't
to
catch himself, I catch him.
Yeah, true. But try to not allow feelings to make decisions for you. Try to think it through properly. And if you got a very good game on your hands, you think about the fact that sometimes it's not necessarily you that needs the publisher more. It's really a fair trade at that point. You might have a very, very good game that they really, really want from you. So don't try to, undersell yourself, is what I'm saying.
And I wanted to say, the reason that we're kind of talking about this is because we have talked to so many people, and we have so many friends in the industry who've had bad experiences, who signed contracts without fully understanding what was going to happen. You know, the revenue share is an easy thing to kind of figure out, but like, if you're going in thinking that a publisher is going to give you marketing support, if you don't have that in the contract, if there isn't an established marketing budget and an established marketing plan in your contract, they are not obligated to do that for you. If you don't put anything in there about wanting to go to showcases or going to trade shows, they don't have to do that for you. They can promise it all they want. But unless you get it in writing that says, we're going to do 2 showcases a year, we will support you at these showcases, we're going to pay for, you know, travel for these things. Unless you get it in writing, they're not beholden to any of that.
No.
And so you need to be very aware, you know, even like in terms of like when to release your game. You know, we've had some friends who finish the game, it's done, they're done with it, but because they didn't have anything in their contract about how long, like what time period that the publisher had to release within, the publisher doesn't have to publish it.
And then
Even
at that point, there's a lot of things
you know,
that they goes into their decisions. They will have obligations or how much money they need to make at a certain time of the year, but they also want to make sure they avoid certain other releases. They want to make sure that the marketing is very good, and you know, you could be very much at odds with them in here. You could not agree to their plans, and if you don't have those terms clearly mentioned in the contract, if you can't come to a decision that is good on both sides, you don't have any safety nets at that point.
Yeah, there's also issues you could run into if you're a Kickstarter game. So let's say you're a Kickstarter game and you promise your backers physical rewards. If you don't have anything in your contract that says that your publisher has to help you fulfill those, you're on the hook for that. There's nothing you can do about that. Even worse, if you promised physical editions of your game, and you don't have a publisher who can do that for you, what are you going to do? Because legally, you are beholden to that. It's something that you promised to your backers. So it can get messy, especially if you have Kickstarter stuff. So again, if it's not in your contract, you know, there's definitely a lot to be said for goodwill and conversations and whatever. And to be totally honest, if you come in at a publisher saying, I want all this in writing, they might be too scared of you to make a deal. But
that's fair enough.
you're protecting yourself too. The second you mention a lawyer, you will lose a lot of friends very quickly because it becomes very serious at that point, and they know that you are a legitimate business person. But if you're willing to just, you know, sign the line and call it a day and hope for the best, you can and will be taken advantage of. It will happen. So you have to be prepared for that. So and not to say that all publishers are like evil, because I know it's starting to sound that way.
It is right, yeah.
I mean, to be fair, you know, again, we can point at the positive experience we've had with Merge. You know, the amount of support that we have gotten in developing SunnySide, in terms of like, you know, we in our contract, you know, I really shouldn't really say it, but what I will say is we have creative control, right? We own the IP, we have creative control, we're allowed to make decisions, but we also were willing to listen to what we were told about the game. And they came back at us with some really good perspectives and points that we hadn't considered, and so that we ended up making some big changes way before really anybody got their hands on the game. That ended up, I think, benefiting the game way more than had we not had that experience. So, you know, that was just one of the positives.
Like we're saying, to be cautious, but at the same time, you don't need to just completely shut them out either. Listen to what they will say, especially if you're willing to listen to the experience that they have to share. It's not always, at the end of the day, here's the thing. You could be creatively at odds with each other, but at the end of the day, both of you want a successful game.
Yeah.
There's never a publisher that doesn't want their games to be successful. So if there's one thing you can bank on, it's the fact that your publisher also very much wants the game to be successful. They can have a very different idea of what that success is like.
Yeah.
But
And what they're willing to put into it.
and what they're willing. But at the end of the day, it's both for the success of the game. So I guess don't forget about that.
And like, I mean, the other thing too, the connections that publishers give you in terms of like connections to publishing houses, connections to PR and marketing, or there's definitely something to be said for like, hey, I have a friend at so and so, game news company or whatever. So there's also, I think, just that level of experience of dealing with people who have seen and worked on other games, who can say, hey, here's this thing you're running into with Unreal Engine. We have another game that we're working with that's in Unreal Engine 2. Let's connect you guys and get you guys helping each other so that, the developers can be supportive. So there's definitely something to be said for like the community that publishers can create too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of positives. Don't get me wrong. But I think you should just know what you're getting into as much as possible.
I think we're going to go a bit more in depth into some of the services that some publishers can provide that we listed at the start. But we're going to do that in our extended version of the podcast. So if you would like to listen to the extended version, you can support us down below. We do have a Patreon that you can support. You get the episodes early, and you can also listen to the extended version.
I think base tier will get you in early, and then if you want the extended episode, I think that's the $10 level.
That is the $10 level. We do have a Discord. If you would like to join us and have a chat with us, it's over there. Feel free to also leave us comments about your own experiences or questions that you might have in your own indie journey. And also,
if you are a Patreon person, you're on a roll. If you are a member of our Patreon and you have access to that area of the Discord, please talk to us. Ask us questions, communicate with us. Like, that is an area that I know Rainy and I both watch very carefully, and it's for you guys. So if you want to ask us things that you don't really feel comfortable asking in like the big server, please God, don't DM us because it's distracting. But go post it. Like, we would love to chat with you guys and share information and whatever, hang out. And sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, it's all right. Thank you for listening to us today, and we will see you next week. We talk about everything that's happening in the games industry up to that point. Hopefully nothing would be on fire by then.
God,
See you next week.
I wish every time. Bye guys.